bonjour et bienvenue à un autre épisode de Minut Michif. Moi, c'est Barney Morin, and today my guest is Mark Blieske. You might know him from Sunset Paddles or Paddles Across Canada. Mark, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
So you've had a lot of experience with paddling. You've paddled since you were a little kid, and so you as a non-métis person have done still a lot of work to learn the different indigenous styles of paddles from across Canada. Where did you start your discovery on paddles?
Right from a young boy, I was making paddles when I was, I guess, about 10 years old, made my first paddle. But from that point, I didn't really realize the indigenous origins of the paddle. And that came on later when I realized, oh my gosh, the things that I'm making have greater profoundness as far as their origins than I was giving them. And I found that out through making all of these paddles here, that I am building on the shoulders of the great designers of thousands of years ago. Normally when you go to a company and buy a paddle nowadays in the stores, you're going to find one design, one basic design. I've got just a few here to show you what the indigenous people came up with that it was very important for them that they have a design that is indicative of where they are. In this case here, I have a paddle that's from the Manitoba area, Ontario, Northwest Ontario, Northern Saskatchewan. Yeah. This would be a Créer, Cree paddle. You notice it's much narrower. Yeah. Up north in Manitoba, Northern Saskatchewan, as you get towards Northwest Territories, the trees are small.
Right. Okay, so that's why it's so skinny.
Very much so.
And cool.
So it's a skinnier paddle, but it does just the same job.
Yeah. So what makes this one different than one we would find somewhere else in Canada?
Well, we have here a paddle that's very similar. This is Iroquois. And Iroquois is of various nations, not just one nation, it's several nations, right? And you'll notice that it is similar to what we have at the Créer paddle, but it comes to a point and it's a little wider because they had bigger trees in Ontario and into Quebec. And so you could split this out of a tree quite easily, and the design was easy to make. And that's why the Voyageurs, Northwest Company, adopted this as their design.
Yeah, this looks like a Voyageur paddle.
Very much so. Even with the painting on it. The vermilion is very much a First Nations thing. Okay. The color that you see on here, and that's the color of vermilion. And what would happen is the Northwest Company saw that as a very easy paddle to make because they had to make lots of them.
Right.
One size fits all.
Right, okay, yeah.
Right? This is the milieu. In the center of the
muscle of the canoe,
yeah, exactly. One size fits all, and it was an easy paddle to use, easy paddle to make, and it made its way across Canada. These canoes are paddled across Canada, no problem with a paddle like this.
And when it's that bright, I guess when you lose your paddle, it's easy to find.
That's right, that's right. Quite often they would use blueberries as well, so it might have had a blue tinge to it as well.
Cool. Oh, that's super cool. Okay, to add a little personal touch. Yeah. Now we have a couple other ones here that are that look like I have some interesting character.
Well, if you notice here, we have these ones are very light. They're cedar paddles. This comes from the West Coast. This one happens to be a Haida paddle. But you notice that the paddle design is very similar to what I talked about before with the Iroquois. And you'll find that various tribes right across Canada would adopt a design, and it became their design. If you were to say to a Haida person, say that's an Iroquois paddle, no, they'd say that's my Haida paddle. You say the same thing to an Iroquois, they'd say no, that's not a Haida, that's an Iroquois paddle. Yeah. But even though they are the very similar designs, however, different materials. This is cedar, and that would be ash.
Right,
and
so what they have around you informs the paddle.
Yes.
That's really cool. Any last paddles you want to show us off?
From the East Coast, the style that you see here is irrespective of the woods that are in it. But this is a beaver tail paddle, but that would also have been a derivative of several different things. You'd have a Miigwech, which is a very, very wide paddle because they used it on the oceans. And you'd have then the otter tail or the Algonquin paddle, which has that longer design, and combine the two together and you get this paddle.
So what kind of tree grows with this multi-layered sort of approach? Just kidding. If you guys ever want to learn how to make your own paddle, get your community organized and make your own paddles, you can reach out to Mark, find him at Sunset Paddles, and you can get him to come and teach you. Thank you very much, Mark, for taking a little minute with us.